Hi everyone and welcome back. Let's continue our journey. And in this particular video, I'm going to talk about authorization, role-based authorization when you are working with the NestJS and Next.js. Now I'm going to provide this really nice combination of a Next.js and a Nest.js. Nest.js is nothing but an Express or Node.js backend platform. Next.js is SSR platform where you will log in with the Auth0 either using a NextAuth or just by using this Auth0 SDK. So it is divided, this whole section is divided into two parts. I have already covered last video on Auth0 SDK. This is part of the playlist. In this particular video, we are going to talk about Next.js, Auth0 SDK and the Nest.js. So what is the role of Auth0 SDK? To help you to log in using Auth0, you will get access token and you will also have some mechanism to assign the role. This is very important piece here, so that we can enable the role-based authorization. Authentication, you have a token, you have logged in, you have a token, you are authenticated. But authorized only when you have that particular role assigned. So we will see how we can assign the role through the APIs or through Auth0 console. So you'll put the role, and here at the API layer, this is the NestJS backend we will write. Here we will validate the token first, that okay, this has been generated by this issuer, this is the client and this is the secret, and we will validate the token. If the token is valid, then we will check the role, and there will be some particular APIs which we will allow user to access only if user has admin role or a particular role assigned. So that is what this is the step one. I mean, this is the video one. Now in the second video, what change we are going to do? We are just going to replace this Auth0 SDK with the NextAuth, because NextAuth is helping Next.js developers to manage the session at the Next.js side. So it's just a small change. Instead of just using this, we will replace it with this. Okay, NextAuth v5 is really very nice library. It has lots of capabilities has been added, and internally it is also using the same Auth0 client. I mean, in Auth0 or in NextAuth, you can configure login with the Google, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, all social providers, Keycloak, SSO, SAML, I think, and Auth0 also. So NextAuth is a library. So we will be just interfacing with the NextAuth. NextAuth, we will configure the Auth0 client ID and secret ID. You will log in, you will get the token, and then same token you will pass to the Next.js API. This is the NEST. Some front-end developers get confused that what is Nest.js, because they have heard only NEXT, right? So this is NEST, this is NEXT, right? Both are different. So this is a step 2. Once you are fully understood what is this whole platform is doing, then this particular piece is going to remain same. We are just going to configure the NextAuth with the Next.js application, which is pretty much similar. I mean, here you are just using another library instead of using Auth0 SDK. Rest, how you configure, how you access the session at the client side, server side, all things are kind of a similar. So let's start our journey. We will set up I have already shared an example in the last video. We will extend that example. So you might be thinking why I'm complicating this simple architecture where you can do everything in the Next.js, right? Next.js, NextAuth, Prisma, you write APIs, you write queries at the server side. Everything can be done in just a simple architecture, right? Once you log in through the Next.js, you get a server-side pages or client-side pages. Through the client-side pages, you can send these actions, these server actions. These server actions can further, if you are looking for a data, they can just talk to your Prisma ORM or some query platform to give you the data, right? This is a typical Next.js application looks like from the client and server. From server page, you can directly make you can, if you are using server pages, you can directly access the database, right? Because it's all server side. You don't need to hit APIs. But if you are on the client pages, you can either use the server actions or the APIs. But you think about the large scale application where you have a lots of microservices. In this particular case, do you want to build everything in just this one monolith? where everything is a Next.js. You might have heard about earlier we were using this React app, which is a CSR, pure CSR. There is no server-side logic, and everything with related to data processing is on the API layer in different microservices. Next.js, this SSR rendering has simplified lots of things, but it's also not a good idea to put everything in a server side, right? I mean, in this plain Next.js application. When you have a large domain application, what you do is you create these microservices, and once you log in the Next.js application, either using NextAuth or using Auth0 SDK, you delegate all the API or data processing task to your API platform. That can be API gateway talking to the multiple Next.js microservices. Here I can have a multiple services paired up, right? And API gateway is just managing the routing, trafficking, and all these things. This is the real API service. This is how it works, right? Because we cannot have everything in one service. So this API platform, because what we have done is we have removed this data logic and we put this data logic in these services. Let me remove the links. So all the ORM related stuff will happen in these services, microservices, right? Now, the Next.js application, the objective of this is to decide either it is SSR or CSR, and we will be getting the data from this API platform, right? So let's say you logged in. You will get access token or a session information, either you use the NextAuth or Auth0 SDK. That session information you will be passing to this API platform in the authorization header. Now you can also carry the role. That role we need to validate in the API platform after this token is received at a target service. That will decode the role and will check if this API is allowed for this particular user role or not, right? So this is how I design my platform. I mean, Next.js I keep lightweight because I don't want to build a huge monolith and everything. I put data also, API also, actions also. Next.js will have only the pages, server and client side pages, server actions. Now, another important part. Just hear me out. So you will understand the difference. Okay. So what happens? Let's say you are doing a client page. This is the client side page, and you want to get a data. What you can do? You can hit an API. This is what we have done typically, or you can hit a server action. Right. These are the two options. I will color code them. Now, at these two places, there are two options. If you already have ORM and all these pieces here at server side, then it's easy for you to get the data. Here it is ORM database, right? What I will do is I will go and say, okay, give me this data which the client is looking for, client side page. Or if it is a server side layer and if it is a monolith, I can go and say, okay, give me the data. Because I have access to the Prisma client, right? So this scenario is we are not talking. In this case, everything is inside this Next.js. But what I did is, okay, I'm not going to manage the every type of data here. I will just manage the API and server actions. Now here, there are two options. Either you can hit your Next.js API platform directly from your API and actions because it's a server side. You already have access token, so you can actually start talking the Nest.js or Node.js APIs from here. Because you have a session information, you have authorized token, and this API platform further will talk to the Nest.js services, database, blah, blah. Or I don't need to talk to APIs or server actions. If I have the data, let's say you are actually hitting a REST API, right? I already got a token, so why should I go and talk to the server actions or APIs? Next.js APIs are internal, right? So that your client pages can directly go and get the data to the APIs. Now, either API can talk to external APIs or on the client and client pages, you can actually hit directly the microservice. The only thing which you need is the session information. Here you need a token. Authorized header, right? This is what you need. And these external microservices can be written in Node.js, Express and all. So here you actually totally decoupled. When you need a data, after login, you are not dependent on the APIs, not server actions. You are totally dependent on your API platform, but you are dependent on the session information which you are getting from the Next.js Next Auth or Auth0 SDK, right? That is giving you the session, and that session we can validate at the API layer. If the session is not valid, okay, I will clear out the cookies and I will go take you to the login page. This is the important concept which people somehow it's hard for them to understand. But this is how, in these two different ways, you can architect your application. You create Next.js application lightweight just for authentication and for creating client and server pages. But for fetching the data, you can totally depend on external microservices. Or you write your own database queries, Prisma here, and you hit your API server actions and get the data. That's another way. Third way is, yes, you are still using APIs and server action, but they internally, not calling a database queries, they internally making a call to the Nest.js microservices, which are written here. But I don't like this approach. Why should I take this particular route? First I go here. Okay. First I go here and then I come back here. Instead, I can go directly to the APIs, because session is session. Same session we are checking here. If session is deprecated or invalid, we will not give you the data. We will say, okay, you're not authenticated, and then front end can take action to take you to the logout. But for safe side, if you want to protect your session, then always send a request to your server first, which is APIs and server actions. They will check the internal session, or like next auth session, if user session exists or not. If session exists, then only forward the request to the API platform. Okay, I hope this is pretty much a simple example is clear. Now we'll build on top of this. Hi everyone. So let's talk about this particular flow. Here we have a Next.js application with the Auth0 SDK already configured. And once you log in with Auth0, what you will get access token. So through access token, you can directly go and talk to your APIs. Instead of going talk to Next.js APIs and then Next.js APIs go talk to the Nest.js APIs, we can directly make a route. So this is what we are going to talk about in this, either a client page or a server page, because page can be a server also. Server needs data. They can also make an API call directly to the API platform. So this is a Nest.js APIs we are going to write. There we are going to validate the role also. Okay, there may be a particular request which are allowed only for a particular role. So that role based authorization we will check in this particular flow. So for this particular requirement, I have created a small POC. Okay, POC in sense is simple Next.js application with Auth0 SDK, some API routes, client side page, server side page, server actions, or server side APIs. And we will see with a simple login. So first I will talk about this application, how I configured it. So the setup of the application is pretty much simple. I'm not going to go into the details how to set up this. It's a simple Next.js application, because the focus here is how we are applying role-based authorization from Next.js to Nest.js APIs. That is my primary focus. There we will write code. So I added this library. Okay, and in my page.tsx, this is my landing page. Inside this layout, I will put a user provider that is coming from Auth0 SDK. Okay, and you can see I have a particular API route also, which is handling all the login, logout, session information. Like this is the API auth. This is what you need to configure. So if you have seen my previous video, I have already talked about all those things in the detail. I will add the link in the description. Please, you must watch this. I mean, it's obvious I cannot merge all those things in a single video, right? So this is how we configure the API routes, and for the demo, these are the protected routes where I'm getting the session. If the user exists and the role exists, then allow user to access it. And there are some, this is the server side page, and this is the page which is showing, okay, you are logged in. You are able to access this particular page, right? So let's see how it really works. So I will just simply do the login. So this is already integrated with the Auth0, right? Auth0, and it is also using Auth0 Organization. So I will do the login with one of my email ID, and then it will allow me to access the application. So you can see this is my profile information. I will see the logged in page. Yes, I need to go back. So this is the admin page only. This page is should be allowed only to all those users who have the role admin. So where this role comes from, right? This is very interesting thing, and there, this is the place where we will look into Auth0, how to configure the roles and how we can access the role once user is logged in. How can we have the role in the token? So this is the login page. This is the public endpoint. Everybody can access it. This is the login page, and this is the protected admin. And this is showing I'm already logged in. So my session exists at the Next.js side. So how I'm able to get the role? Because if you see what I'm doing in the code for this particular admin route, you can see I'm just trying to get the access token. Okay, this is how you can get the access token in client server side page once the session exists. And here I'm just trying to check the role of the user. So this is user object is a session object that contains these attributes or not. So how can I talk about this? Here also you can see I'm just trying to extract the role. If this role is equal to admin, that means you are allowed to access it. So overall, what we are getting, we got the access token. Now we need to pass this access token to our API layer. An API layer will decode, validate the token, and will check the role. But how this role is coming with the token? That's an interesting question. And let's take a look onto that first. So here you can see we have two organizations. I will go to the test organization. Okay. And in test organization, I have members. I mean, I use this organization feature. Otherwise, you can also just simply do the user management. This is my user. And you can go directly and assign the roles here. Assign the roles, right? I already have configured these roles, guest, creator, and admin. Admin role is already assigned. So this is how you set the roles for the users. Now, the important part is once user logs in to using Auth0 platform, how can we get the role in the token? Because how my APIs will know the role of this user through the token? Because these Auth0, Keycloak, Firebase, they provide you a feature so that you can add additional metadata also. You know how this role-based authorization, access-based control, how those are configured. Once user logs in, we embedded some more information in the token that tells about the access permissions, that tells about the root role. Because underneath the role also, you can configure more access control list that you can configure in your APIs, or you can also embed that information in the token, right? So here we are using organizations. So in the test organization, I see the one member. If you are using organization, then this is how you need to assign the role. So here this is how you can assign the role to this user. Assign role, admin. After this, interesting part is, this is not the only thing you need. You also need to tell Auth0 that, okay, boss, please start sending this role information embedded in token. So that is called enrichment of the token that we can do in the actions triggers. So this is post login trigger, this enrich token. I think you will be getting these tokens in the rules. Let me just check. Yeah, this enrich token, and this enrich token is doing nothing but, if you see what it is doing, once user logs in, right, this is just adding this role information to the token namespace. So it's all about enriching the token. So it is adding that to the ID token and access token both. So, you know, I mean, Auth0 provides ID token and access token that I will talk about. But the access token which you are getting post login, here you have embedded email, app metadata. In this app metadata, you can actually customize this based on your more access control list. But here I'm assigning the role, and Auth0 is saying that you should, if you have the rules, you move them to the triggers. So post login trigger, either you have a rules is also there. This is the post login trigger, and this is the code which it is executing. This section will be outdated runtime. Let me see. So currently I need to move the code, but you can just configure the rules. That's it. Because they are going to get deprecated soon. So you need to migrate them to the actions and move this code there. So this is what it is doing, right? This is enriched token, and that is getting applied whenever you do the login. So whatever the token you are receiving, that token has all these information. So let me do one thing. I will try to add one dummy information. Let's see if that is coming in my token. Can I update this? Let me see if I can edit this script. Okay. So if you want, you can also add the same logic here. This will execute on post login every time. Here I already added a check. If the rule is getting executed, don't need to do anything. Just skip this. Okay, so if I do the login now, let's see what we have in the token. So here I'm printing the access token, which is received from Auth0. I will copy this and go to jwt.io, and here you can see I have this role. Now, how this role-based authorization works is the same token you will send to the APIs, and the API layer, we will check if the admin role is assigned, then do this. So there is an admin API guard, role guard, all these things can be applied. First, we need to validate the token. If the token is valid, then we need to apply the role-based authorization. So now there may be a question, how to assign these roles? That depends, or use user onboarding. So there should be a user sign-up mechanism. Through that process, you can assign the role after adding the user to the organization or directly adding the user to the user database. So currently this protected API, which you can see here, this is the internal API route, protected admin API endpoint, which is checking the role. If role is admin, then only it is allowing. So this is internal Next.js API. Okay, it is doing you do a get call. What it is happening is you are checking the user role. If everything is fine, send the success response. But here in the same case, what you can do is you already got the token from your server page. You can directly make a call to the external NestJS API by passing the authorization token, which you just received from the user session. Okay, and then at the API layer, you validate the token, validate the role, and return the response. But if you are writing a whole Prisma code and everything here, you do the Prisma queries and everything, just check the user role here. If user role is not admin, just send him right away. So this is what we are going to work on. We are going to write a simple NestJS for the demo, because once you get a token, you need to hit a NestJS APIs, and we need some mechanism. I have already shown you simple Express app, but how to do the same thing in the Nest.js? So we will be writing two things, one middleware and one auth guard, or role guard you can say. Middleware will just check the token. If the token is valid, that will just do the authentication. Now for authorization, we will create a role guard, and we will create one protected route that will be allowed only for admin roles. Okay, so let's see that in the action. So this is my expectation that you already know a little bit on the Nest.js side. So this code is just only a very basic Nest.js application. I will explain you what a middleware, how middleware look like, how I have added this role guard. So there is a two APIs. One is the health API, one is the role API. Health API you can access only if you are authorized. You are passing authorization header in the token. I mean, if you are passing the token in the authorization header. Second is if you are passing the authorization header and the role in the token is the admin. So these are the two things, two APIs we are going to configure. So for these things, we will write a middleware and we will write a role guard. So let's see what our app module root. This is the root module, which consists of what the modules it contains. We have just a configuration module, and we have this config module, and this is the auth middleware and a health controller. Because this is not a very big application, this is the imports. We are importing config module, health module, and just one service we need to create. And this is how we register the module middleware. Sorry, this is how we register configure. Inside configure method, we are going to apply the auth middleware on all the routes in the application. So this is the auth middleware. You can see this is the auth middleware, and this is being applied to all the routes. Because in the whole application, there are only two important things: how we are writing the middleware and how we are applying the role guard, because we need to extract the role from the token. and then we need to check that role while hitting the API route. So if you look into the folder structure, I mean, I just use a very baseline structure. I'm using some packages. If you can see JSON Web Token and JWKS RSA because it's Auth0 token, and I will be using JWKS client, Auth0 client, to validate the token. Okay, and here core, I just created these dummy folders. You can have a middleware, you can have a guard. Okay, and inside repository I just have a health controller. That's it. Okay, health module, health controller, and this module is getting added here, the health module, and a config module just to provide a basic configurations, because this is the NestJS config module, and in this we are passing this Auth0 JWKS URL. When audience is also not needed, only this JWKS URL we are passing because token validation happens against JWKS URL of Auth0 domain. I will explain this in the code how actually happens. You might have heard about JSON Web Token, and there is a method jwt.sign and jwt.verify. It is kind of a similar, a little different. In jwt.verify we need to pass one additional argument. I mean, the signing key we are going to get from Auth0, because we are not setting the signing key while doing a signing. So if you remember, we do something like this: jwt.sign. Here it is our payload, and this is our secret. And then we do is jwt.verify. Right? We pass the token and secret. This is how we have worked with JSON Web Token. We create a token, then we pass the token and pass the same secret to verify if this token has been generated with the same token. In Auth0, it's Auth0 signing key against which we will validate the token. So let's see how our middleware code looks like. Okay, so this is a middleware service, and we also need a service which is going to validate our token. So let's create this service. This is the middleware which is already registered on the app module. So here we are just importing all the things: NestJS common, NestJS middleware, and middleware is nothing but interceptor. So whenever you send a request, this middleware will validate that you are passing the token in the authorization header. If you are passing it, if you're not passing it, we will just throw a bad request, or sorry, unauthorized exception, or if you are passing it, then we need to validate if the token is valid or not, right? So this is just a simple logging which we are adding, and then we will just start writing a simple class. So here this is a simple implementation we are doing. This is injectable class. This is, you can see, authentication middleware implements Nest middleware, and here we will define just a use method because that is what we need to add. And here we are injecting this auth client service. I mean, it's just a service which is going to validate our token and decode our token and will give us, okay, what is inside the token. Like, okay, to inside token we need to get email, role, user ID and all, and based on the role, that role we will pass in the session in the whole service. So everywhere we can check. Here we are checking the headers. If authorization header is not passed, we will just send HTTP exception, throw new HTTP exception, and we can just send, I think, 401 missing authorization header. If this is fine, if we are getting the token in the authorization header, then so this is how it overall looks like. We are going to call this .service.authenticate method. Okay, this authenticate method, we are passing authorization header. It will check if the token is valid, everything is good, then it will give us the role and email, because we need role and email, and that role and email we will set in the user object. This is how typically works, right? You decode the token, extract the information, and set that information on the user object. That is what we are doing here. We are actually adding this user and user object inside a request. The request.user, if you do inside your controller, you will get the user object with the roles and email. Then we just need to add a guard which will check, okay, if you are admin, then only I will allow you to access the API. So this is our Auth0 service which we are writing, which we are calling from the Auth0 middleware, right? There is authenticate method, and here we are validating if the token is valid. When in the token also, it should have a two parts, authorization and the bearer and the string. So if first it is trying to get the token, it is checking if it has a bearer, paste string. If not, invalid bearer token. I mean, you cannot pass just a garbage inside authorization header. And here we are doing decode. So there is simple thing to decode, jwt.decode, and then it will try to extract the if the decode doesn't have a header and all, that means your token is corrupted. It is not valid. And here we will define the authenticate method. This is the method which is being called from the middleware. It is first we'll get the token, check the validity of the check the token type, token string, then decode it. And here this is the important part. For Auth0 token, we are doing this JWKS client, and here this is the argument JWKS URI that we are passing from the environment variable. Rest all are constant, and here we are checking the authenticity of the token. jwt.verify, we are passing token string and signing key. Signing key we are getting like this, which will check the token validity or not. And this verify method we will define. Verify method will be doing the same thing, jwt.verify token string against the signing key, which we have received by calling this get signing key method, right? So the same argument here, we will just do jwt.verify token string signing key. And here once the token is valid, obviously we already have a decoded payload, we can extract the namespace, email and role, and we just returned. So this is what we are overall returning. So from the Auth0 middleware, you will get the roles and email, we will assign it, and that's it. This will be flowed, this will be applied. I mean, all this information will be available in the request session. Now, this thing, we are already saying that all the routes need to have a authorization header. There is no public route. That means using health route, we will check the token is valid. And then on top of the token, we are also checking, we have added the role guard, role allowed. Role allowed is just a decorator, custom decorator, which is going to set the admin property on the roles attribute. Okay, so this is just a Nest.js way of creating the custom annotation, custom decorators. It is doing nothing but in the metadata, it is setting the rules property. Now, in this controller, I mean, if you're a Nest.js developer, you know how this works. We are applying guards, use guard. And here I have to write a role guard, which will validate the role. So here you can pass multiple roles. Even if user has one of these roles, he will be allowed to access this particular API. Currently, I have defined only one role, admin and user. So let's write a simple role guard. Role guard has a simple mechanism. Here we have to write a simple activate method inside the simple class. Role guard implement can activate, and here it is accessible through the reflector. We can access the properties, and it has a can activate method which will return true. If it returns true, that means you are allowed to access the API. So we got the first roles property, which we have set at the controller route level. If roles length equal to true, if you're not passing anything, that means you are allowed. Otherwise, first we will get the user role, user.role, whatever is set in the user role. And here we are checking whatever at the controller we are passing, does that string exist in the user role? If yes, we are good. You can access that particular role and it will return true. That means you are allowed to access. So let's see this in the action. So here we are not passing anything. About close. We can see missing authorization header. Now let me pass authorization header. And you can see it is returning okay true. That means we are able to validate the token and this request is authenticated. We are passing the token. Now if I pass execute, this is also saying okay because this token contains the admin role. Now let's do one change. Controller, health controller. Let's say if I'm changing this to user role, I'm saying that this route can only be accessed by user, not by admin. I think it should be restarting my application. It should have done this. And let's see this. So if I try to access this, I got forbidden resource because my token contains the admin role and I'm only allowing the user role, right? So let's fix this. Let's switch this to admin role. And I'm already logging everything. And here you can see we are getting this role. This is the token. This is the role metadata. We are getting the admin role. Yes, API is allowing only the admin role, and user also contains the admin role. So both has the admin role in common. So we allow you to access this at API. So this is the overall demo of how we can pair together Next.js and NestJS microservices. Now it is a simple service. There can be multiple microservices working against the same token, and you can have a role-based access control and all those features. Sorry, this was a lengthy video, but I think this was pretty much useful. In the next, we will talk about Next Auth instead of using Auth0 SDK.